you know, I hear lots of people that get all excited about, hey, what should my case acceptance rate be? And the challenge with that is, I have a client of ours out of Missouri that we grew like $1 million in a 12-month period of time. And their case acceptance rate was 18%. Now you would say that that's terrible, but they went from about $130,000, $150,000 a month to $275,000 a month in 12 months' time. Their case acceptance rate is never going to be 80, 90%. Because this doctor's clearly swinging for the fences. He's presenting a lot of big cases. He's presenting a lot of ortho, Invisalign, a lot of cases that are big dollars that are just not going to be accepted well. And so the challenge there is that he's never going to have a high percentage. But would I like to see it go from 18 to some other percentage? Absolutely, I would. That'd be awesome. So when we're looking at it, we want to obviously be cognizant of that number and aware of what we're doing and always looking to grow it. I don't think I can give you a benchmark as to what yours should be, because I think it's going to vary on every single practice. So that obviously then brings us to overhead. And I want to go to the board here for a second and look at the overhead numbers. The numbers when we're looking at overhead, it's interesting when you look at them because, you know, there's two ways that you can impact your overhead. One is you can drive up revenue, and driving up revenue gives us the ability to decrease our overhead because it's a percentage. Or what we can do is we can drive down our expenses. Either way gets the job done. There's no right way. We tend to focus very heavily on the drive revenue up side of the equation, mostly because it's the greatest area to impact the net profit. We can squeeze this expense number as much as we want, but maybe we can squeeze 5% out of it, maybe 10%, but not a whole lot more than that. So it becomes very, very limiting in order to be able to affect this number here. But when you look at your expenses, there's a couple things I want to look at here. One is we've got fixed overhead, and what that tells us is, or what's included there is going to be your rent. It's going to be your staff's salaries, because we're probably not going to grow your hours that the team's working. It's also going to include things like utilities, marketing, software expense, those sorts of things. And then the next piece of this, of course, is your variable overhead. And I can't write real well, but you get the idea. And variable overhead is going to be composed of your lab, your supplies, taxes, anything else, merchant fees as an example, if you use a lot of credit cards for payments. And it would be interesting to examine how much of your payment is being done via credit card. And do you have a reasonable discount rate there, or are you being raked over the coals? But when it comes to the two, you know, this one is going to be the same regardless. And this is where we get a lot of efficiency by driving revenue, because if this one doesn't change at all, if our rent stays the same, if our staff salaries stay the same, if all those numbers stay the same, and yet this goes up, this as a percentage shrinks a great deal. And it allows us to drive massive, massive profit to the bottom line of the business. Whereas this one, supplies as an example, if you're going to do $100,000 or $200,000 more in dentistry, you're going to see an increase in your supply bill. It's a simple fact. Not as a percentage, but as a dollar. And we'll go through the percentages here in a second. So it's important to understand that we can get a lot of economies of scale out of this by driving this up. And that's why we spend all of our time driving revenue, is because it allows us to drive massive profit to the bottom line by growing revenue, and we know this is going to stay the same. The only variable expenses, as I said, are going to be lab supplies, taxes, your personal taxes, which that really isn't in the business side anyway, merchant fees, and I can't really think of any other major ones that would be big issues. So it's interesting when you start looking at that and you understand as a percentage how much we can do to a business and what we can do to drive profit through those modalities. And it's important to understand that.